It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley as we begin a Wednesday election night coverage here at Red Eye Radio Election Night Headquarters. Let's go over to the Red Eye Radio Election Night Headquarters Election Night Desk with Gary McNamara.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what? It looks just like your regular desk.
It does. Yeah.
It's amazing. They did an amazing job.
Not much different than the decks. The desk last night, not the deck.
Yeah,
the desk.
You're right.
I'm looking at before I get into our analysis of it. I love seeing the analysis. Let me go to Drudge here. MAGA election nightmares. Dems win again.
Uh-huh. It's over.
And
Republicans will never win anything ever again. Yeah, okay.
But then, and that's Drudge report. All right,
yeah.
That's Drudge. All right, and then you look at CNN. Governor Youngkin's strategy to push Republicans to run on non-MAGA messaging fell short.
Yeah,
and could nudge GOP candidates across the U.S. further right.
Uh-huh.
And so, I mean, it's interesting just to look at all of it. If overall, I wasn't surprised by anything last night. You get the I saw on social media some Republicans in Virginia go, "Well, that's it. Basically, I'm done." If they can't win in Virginia, which is, as we know, much more of a has been a blue state for a significant period of time, and so I wasn't surprised what happened in Ohio.
No,
I wasn't surprised at all by that. We'll get into more of a discussion on that bill here in a little bit. I get back to what you and I have said all along. On the issues, if you look at, for example, the abortion issue, as we have pointed out, and the constitutional amendment that was passed in Ohio, the majority of Americans don't agree with that.
Right.
Because what it does is, now they could make legislation that limits abortion to a particular number of weeks. And that's how the Democrats were promoting it. The constitutional amendment gives you, makes abortion a state right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And because there are no limits in the constitutional amendment, Republicans have said, well, that means it's unlimited, which at the moment it would be.
Yeah, unless they do something to change that.
Right. And as we have stated before on the abortion issue, and the polls that I've seen shows that the majority of Americans want some restrictions on abortion. And as we have stated before, that's the key if you're a conservative. Because, I've talked about the number of discussions I've had over the last, 14 months. Since the Dobbs decision came down, and it's with every single pro-abortion woman that I talk to, every single one, who have said, it's my body, and I can do what I want with it. I said, oh, so you're for abortion till birth? No, absolutely not. So you're not for partial birth abortion? No way. Well, what should the limit be? Oh, I don't know. And there was a number of, answers, 15 weeks, 25 weeks. I said, well, then it's not about your body. What do you mean?
Right.
What do you mean it's not about? because you've just said your body doesn't matter after 25 weeks or 26 weeks or 15 weeks or whatever. You've put the limit on it yourself.
Right.
And why is that? Why do the majority of Americans believe that abortion should be limited? Nobody ever asked that question. Why is it? Because the majority of Americans believe that somewhere in the womb, the fetus becomes a human being.
Yep.
It's simply the argument, the debate is simply when it becomes a human being for the majority of Americans. And that's why you've had Democrats screaming that they are not for abortion till birth. Screaming when any Republican brings that up, that's not what we believe. Well, for the radicals, Planned Parenthood, whatever, of course that's what they believe. They believe that. And I would probably say that a significant portion of the Democrats in Congress believe in abortion right up to birth. And so it's the selling of it, which is why we have said on every single issue that you have out there, this is why the Republican Party needs to get it together, which they don't have it together at all. They don't know where to go. You know, they are more, the Republican Party right now is more on personality. You saw it as in Kentucky, for example. As soon as Beshear won, he's the incumbent. Like the incumbent won in Kentucky, the incumbent won in Mississippi, who's a Republican, and in Kentucky, Beshear won. Looks like around what the polling was all over the place, but in the last month, Cameron was only up in one poll. Beshear was up in all the rest. So and immediately it was all the anti-Trump people in the Republican Party and all the candidates. See, Trump endorsements don't work, and that's why you had Drudge, who hates Trump, state MAGA nightmare, MAGA nightmare. And so that's how that was promoted as a MAGA nightmare. Now, did that come into consideration for some people in Kentucky? Probably. Was that the difference? I don't know. When you get down to the state level, it's very tough. It's very tough, and we've said this before. It's very tough when you are in a different state to analyze what goes on in state elections if you're not there to monitor it every day. It's pretty tough to come up, with a conclusion as to, what is actually going on in that particular state.
Right.
And so I will say this, though. You and I have said this over and over again with this optimism of the poll that came out the other day, and we said, look, folks, it's one poll. Now, we had fun with it because of how the Democrats responded to that, and we have more on that, coming up. But we've seen it. We've been through a number of election cycles where it doesn't matter where the people stand on the issues. They'll vote against the issues for a personality.
Yep.
Or against a personality. And that's the problem that Republicans still have. When you look at the actual issues, it's slammed, and more polling out today. Slam dunk, absolutely slam dunk for Republicans.
When you look at 2008 for Barack Obama, the euphoria was a for Barack Obama vote. In 2012, that still existed somewhat, but to a greater extent, it was against a Mitt Romney, and we saw that play out on the issues. Mitt Romney crushed it in all the polls after the debates on the issues. You look at it and say, well, there's no way that Mitt Romney will lose. And he did. And they had built up even that year during the primary with Newt Gingrich using the liberal tactic of going after Romney based on what he did for a living and his business. And that's something we've seen over and over again. 2016 was a pro-Trump personality. He also identified on the border. He identified the issues, but really his personality carried him in 2016. And in 2020, it was very different. Even though there was massive turnout for him, there was greater hatred also against him.
When you say his personality, I take in 2016 that the part of his personality that stuck with the American public was on things like the economy,
yes,
and doing things for the economy and the border.
It's why Make America Great Again worked.
Right.
It worked for him.
He was really going to push for it.
Yeah.
That was the people believed.
Right.
He's going to push for that.
Based on who he was. Personality may not be the word that applies completely, but in part it was because everybody said, look at his negotiating skills, look at the type of businessman that he is, not just that he was a businessman, because 4 years earlier, Mitt Romney was a businessman and he didn't get the job.
Yeah, I think it was, and this is not, some people may take it as a negative. It's funny because I'll say things that are positive towards somebody, and somebody will take it as, I can't believe you're so negative. I wasn't. That was actually a positive.
Yeah.
But I think the anger and frustration that he showed resonated with the American people of, this is a guy who's as angry as I am, and we need to get these things done. And I think that's the part of his personality that resonated at that point. But, you know, I look overall at the Republican Party, and you know, you see Trump didn't lose anything when he basically, you know, you've got pro-life people saying, my God, Trump abandoned, you know, what he did in 2016 with getting the judges in there in the Supreme Court and overturning Roe v. Wade. And now he's talking about the fact, well, I can come up with a deal. I can come up with a deal that will please everybody on abortion. Now, I know people will get upset that are loyal Trump supporters no matter what. That was a delusional statement by Trump. You're not going to please anybody with any abortion legislation in the United States. You're not going to get both sides happy.
No,
that's not going to happen.
It would have happened. It would have happened by now, yes, if it were possible.
This is going to continue to go back and forth. And as you see, as I've said, the one positive on the abortion issue for conservatives is already the majority of people want limits on it. If they want limits, and this is talking about the issue, not the politics of it, but the actual issue and what's in people's minds, as I've discovered over the last couple of years, like I said, every single person here, and we're talking now over 10 women that I talked to on it, that all of them pro-choice, but none of them believing, not one, that it should go to birth. Well, then you have to ask yourself, and then you get in that question where the Democrats scream, well, it's not about going to, birth. We're not for that. You're lying about that. That would happen in Ohio. But the fact is, many Democrats, the politicians, want that, and the pro-abortion groups want it till birth. But they understand that the fear of you can't sell that to the public. Well, why can't you sell it to the public? Dig down deeper into that particular issue, because at some point Americans believe that it becomes a human being in the womb. That can only go in one direction, as we find out more and more and more in technology, about when you've seen, for example, probably sonograms and things like that, and all that have helped move that in that particular direction. And so that's the positive if you're a conservative on it. The negative that you have on it is the fact that abortion is like a lot of other issues. I want it for my convenience. If I do something, if I do something, if I have sex and get pregnant, well, that's okay. I can get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is somebody in their own self-interest saying, I'm not even going to consider whether it's a life or not. I'm not getting in that debate. I just want to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
For example, this came out, Bloomberg's projections from October of last year, not the fiscal year from October 1st, but from October 31st of last year to October 31st of this year, we now passed $1 trillion in interest on the debt. $1 trillion is going towards it. Americans don't care about putting our burden on future generations. We say to hell with the unborn. Let's put our debt on them. There's no serious discussion on it. We've talked about the immorality on it. It doesn't resonate with Americans. They don't care. They want what they want, and they want it now. You can say that about you can say it about about abortion. You can say it about the debt where we are. They don't care. You may, but Americans overall don't care. And you look at it where the Democrats have gone with victim oppressor. Think about this. Think about the defense, and the vast majority of it comes from the Democrat side and the liberal side on Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Genocide, fine. You don't think there's a relation between all of it?
Oh, yeah. When you look at it.
That was a rhetorical question. I wasn't asking you that.
It doesn't have to be a rhetorical question. There absolutely is.
Yeah.
And we pointed that out before. If there's no regard for life at the very beginning, then tell me what you do care about.
Yeah. Because the majority of Americans believe it's a life somewhere in there.
Yep.
Well, some just don't care. I don't want to think about it. I just want what I want
from
now.
the very beginning. And if that's their a foundation of their beliefs, they'll carry that all the way through. And we're seeing that.
We had a great show ahead. 866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Cold temperatures and water can lead to only one outcome, and ice has no place in the truck's air system. That's why it's crucial to keep your air system moisture-free as the temperatures begin to drop. Make sure your air system is in top condition before plunging temperatures put it to the test. In addition to changing your air dryer desiccant cartridge and draining your air tanks, make sure that no alterations have been made to the air compressor discharge line. This can dramatically increase the amount of moisture in the air system. Lastly, have a professional technician check the condition of your air dryer heater, purge valve, and check valve.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I'll tell you the one thing that I did agree with, the one instant analysis, is because in Virginia, the State House went back to Democrats, and the Senate stayed Democrat. Any thought of Youngkin running in 2024 is gone.
Yeah.
That's gone.
Yeah.
That instant and now, I don't know if he was going to run or not.
Right.
But the fact is, when that happened, it was like, okay, there's just because they've always talked about Youngkin getting in, at some point because he is the non-MAGA guy who has had success.
Right. Yeah.
Now that's gone now.
There was still a story of that a couple of days ago, actually,
Yeah.
In the media. That the support for Youngkin is different, and it makes you wonder. Does McAuliffe come back? Does he run again at some point?
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you want. You know, you and I said this. If anybody believes that because of the change that the blue states are going to become more red, that's not going to happen. And if you have people moving out over the next 75 years, because that's the projection of population growth, where the blue states aren't going to be growing, they're going to become more blue. And I just don't see, you and I have said this, we don't see any big, even with where the polls are right now, which on the issues, on the federal level, because abortion's no longer on the federal level, that's a state level. Now, that could affect the elections next year if you've got propositions in different states on abortion. That could drive Democrats to the poll, and it could affect the election again.
Right. If they're not motivated to vote for Joe Biden, they'll be motivated for that quite possibly, yeah.
Right. So and so that may be a problem for Republicans in other swing states next year. For Ohio, though, it won't be a problem because that's already settled at that particular point.
Right.
But it's not going to change. Now, in the state of Texas, for example, there were 14 different 14 constitutional propositions on the ballot. 13 passed, one did not. But when you look at it, most of them that passed are conservative.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at it, and passed by wide margins. Proposition 3, for example, forcing lawmakers to ask voters for authorization before they could impose any new state taxes on residents that would be based on net worth or wealth. 69% to 31%.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. No,
because the wealth tax is something, you know, the wealth taxes, I thought that would be closer. I thought that might be 55 to 45 because there is a huge Democrat population inside the United States, or excuse me, inside the state of Texas.
Right.
Yeah, we're almost as big as the United States. But that was 69 to 31. Like, whoa. You had, for example, another proposition here in the state of Texas, just to give you a clue, requiring state and local governments to provide evidence that regulation of generally accepted farming and ranching practices is needed to protect the public from danger. That approved 80 to 20.
Yeah. Right.
Wow. 80 to 20.
Yeah.
Here we go. Allowing the state to spend $18 billion on property tax cuts for homeowners and businesses, cut school districts' tax rates, and enact other tax changes. Are you ready for this? That passed 84% to 16% in the state of Texas.
Every major newspaper endorsed it. I mean, it was, and because I thought to myself, once I saw that trend and doing the research, I thought, all right, what you're seeing right now, especially with inflation, is even liberals saying, you know what, people need relief, and we need to do something. Now, think about that when it comes to school taxes. I thought there would be a stronger push from liberals in the state to say, no. If we start lowering the school taxes, then public schools are going to suffer. And you didn't have that kind of pushback. Well, not to the extent I thought it would be.
And again, you go to the we can get a tax cut, lower our property taxes. Everybody's going to go for it. But understand the selling of not cutting taxes, you know, nationwide, and how liberals have embraced that we need to tax more.
Right.
Oh my God, That passed 84-16. And then, with the talk of Democrats on the wealth tax, for that proposition to pass, 69%, that it would force lawmakers to ask voters for authorization before they could impose any new state taxes on residents that would be based on net worth or wealth. 69% to 31%.
Yeah.
And that's because the 31%, there were 596,000 votes for that. That's the 31%. That was all Austin.
Yeah, exactly. Austin also is what killed Prop 13, which would have raised the mandatory retirement age of talk show hosts to 79. It's currently at 75. So in the state of Texas, talk show hosts have to retire. It was for judges, actually.
Yeah, for judges, the increase in the mandatory retirement age, state judges from 75 to 79, and the minimum retirement age from 70 to 75.
That was the ageist, all the ageist in Austin, the young people.
All right, but the one that we need to talk about, we've talked about this one a lot on the air because this is just pure insanity, and it did pass 66% to 34%. This is the one that we have talked about. This shows the insanity. And I can understand somebody voting yes for it who's a Republican.
Oh, no. If you look at the Republican makeup in terms of the state House and the state Senate, it had broad support. Very few Republicans voted against it.
But I can understand that if you're I understand that if you're a Republican in the state of Texas and you're looking at the federal government and the amount of subsidies they've given to solar and wind and understanding how it works and the fact that you're not going to stop that, but you can't have a free Zola like we had in February of 21.
That's what, by the way, that's what there were two newspapers, in fact, both major newspapers in our area endorsed it. They were for it. And they cited, I think it was the Dallas Morning News that cited, look, after Free Zola, we can't have that happen again. Now, I didn't read the entire article. That was the basis of their support for it.
Right. But the fact is you're not going to stop the federal government because it's pure, the whole makeup now of what the grid's going to be in Texas is pure insanity.
Yeah.
It's absolute insanity, but I understand why the Republicans introduced this because they had no choice. They can't fight the federal government on it. And the federal government, as we have stated, Free Zola happened because wind and solar didn't work when it got really cold out and cloudy. And then you had problems with the transportation of natural gas to some of the natural gas plants out there, and then some of the coal generation plants had problems. But as we said, no one is going to put in any long-term capital investment into those forms of energy production when the federal government has made it known to any company that's going to do it, you're out of business. You're out of business.
And now that's what the Prop 7 will facilitate that investment.
So,
with taxpayer funds.
So what's happening is because they don't want Free Zola to happen again. Then the state of Texas, because they can't fight the federal government, had to come in and say, all right, we're putting this to the people. Do you want to basically build natural gas plants that won't be running all the time, but they'll be ready to go at a moment, at an instant, and if they'll have enough reserves actually on site or do whatever they need to ensure. Because, look, I grew up in New York, and natural gas has been around for the longest time. And before they went nuts on getting rid of, whatever they could in natural gas, we had natural gas my entire life. And I don't remember ever, with all the cold winters we had, natural gas ever going out. Ever. Not once. So we have the technology to do that. But
Texas learned that years ago. This Free Zola wasn't the first time they had problems with it. And so the delivery of it should have been remedied then. Long before Free Zola. And that would have solved a lot of the problems that happened during that period.
So they're going to build a bunch of, on this, they're going to build a bunch, as long as the Republicans are in power, because this constitutional amendment, if Democrats get in, then they could take that energy fund and use that not for natural gas plants. They could switch it to something else. But right now it's going to go for natural gas plants that will only be running. They won't be running full time, so they can't make any money.
Right.
So it was either raise rates or create an energy fund that has to be paid for by the taxpayer.
Right.
To actually subsidize all forms of energy on the grid will be subsidized. Natural gas, wind, and solar. Because the primary is wind and solar, which has to be subsidized. It can't make it on its own.
Right.
Natural gas could make it on its own and make a profit.
Right.
But since the federal government has focused in on that, and the state can't refuse it, the state's only recourse is to basically charge the taxpayer to build a backup for the insanity that we're getting from the liberals and the federal government.
Yeah. I saw an expert over the weekend, I think it was, Saturday or Sunday, who believes that a lot of these mandates, wind, solar, EVs, and everything else, he believes they'll all be repealed.
They'll have to be.
I don't know how you enact them without crushing, stomping the economy. I don't know how you do that. Let alone the delivery of energy, but it would just crush the economy because, going back to 2008, 2009, when the OEMs were bleeding cash, that whole bailout, what was the liberal call for the bailout once Obama got into office? Well, we have to do this because all these dealerships will close. You want to see dealerships gone? Force them to do what California is going to do in 2035. But he believes even California, he believes that will be repealed even in California.
Well, when you see the interest on the debt now, hit $1 trillion from the end of October of last year to the end of October of this year, just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we thought that might happen because when we saw that they borrowed, what was it, like $400 billion in October.
Right.
I went, my God, Eric, they may hit $1 trillion for that, and they did, according to Bloomberg estimates.
Yep.
$1 trillion of interest. There is no money.
No.
And everything now, they're borrowing everything.
You're going to have to, you're going to have to, everything that you expand now, the borrowed money is going to have to go to cover the interest.
Right. And so,
because it's got to make up in the budget, it's got to make up for what you're paying in interest. And if it's $1 trillion and then more than $1 trillion, where will it be in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? That's not that far away.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I guess Tlaib got censured last night, so doesn't mean anything.
No, it doesn't.
She can wear her scarlet letter along with Representative Mace. They can.
Yeah.
That's.
Yeah.
But I wasn't surprised. 22 Democrats joined.
Yeah.
That's how toxic that is.
Yeah.
22 Democrats joined Republicans on it.
Right. Yeah, it will be interesting to see where this goes and how the entire thing, the war between Israel and Hamas affects 24. I mean, there's no doubt it is going to in a big way, but it's impossible to measure right now because you don't know where the left is going to go with this. The insanity that is everywhere. I mean, and this isn't something that the liberal media isn't reporting on.
Yeah, they are reporting on
it.
It
is
you're right.
all over every channel and the discussion. They're talking about it.
Well, to to see Chip Roy bring up Tlaib going after Biden.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a bizarre. I watched that yesterday. I'm like, this is bizarre.
Yeah,
Chip
right,
Roy
exactly.
talking about Tlaib going after Biden.
Yeah.
Saying that he's committing a genocide
Right.
in Israel.
I-
I'm like, where am I?
I
Where
thought
the
of
hell
that.
am I?
It was about a week ago. That thought crossed my mind, where you would have it was going to be, it would probably be the GOP defending this administration's support for Israel against the attacks from the far left on Capitol Hill, which it turned out to be. That's what happened with Chip Roy.
I know.
Just bizarre.
I know, totally.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on West. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thanks for being here. Well, there you go. This from Bloomberg. U.S. Treasury bills may face renewed selling pressure into the new year if one measure of the nation's swelling debt repayment bill is any guide. Bloomberg estimated annualized interest payments on the U.S. government debt climbed past $1 trillion at the end of last month. Bloomberg analysis shows that projected amount has doubled in the past 19 months from the equivalent figure forecast around that time. That's you, and what they're saying is, can we find enough people to buy the debt? And if you can't, interest rates need to go up on what you pay Treasury bills, which means that adds to the interest and the debt, the interest on the debt. I mean, it's just, I will tell you this, the problem that Republicans have, and we touched on this a couple of weeks ago with the whole speaker thing, is the fact that when things, and you look into next year, and that's why I look at a poll the other day that shows, Trump dominating over Biden. Maybe not. Maybe not. Why? You go into a recession. If you go into a recession, what happens? You don't collect enough tax dollars, which means the debt goes up even more. And there's more borrowing, which, again, and the Democrats wanting to spend more. And when things get bad, the people of the United States expect checks from the government.
Yeah.
With inflation, and if we go into a recession, Americans want the government to help them through it.
Yep.
We know.
Yep.
They've come to expect it. Democrats don't want to cut spending at all. They're not looking at the end game at all. Republicans are. But the split over Republicans is those that wish to shut the government, or initially wanted to shut the government down now, versus those Republicans that say, we need to win the House, the Senate, and the presidency, or we need to have have the House and the presidency or whatever. We need more in Congress for us to be able to actually start cutting. Now, the bad thing is, no matter what happens, we're going to have to cut. And there's going to be cuts even if we don't cut. Even if the budget remains the same, we have to cut because the interest on the debt is eating into programs.
Yep.
And so that's the problem that you have, is the fact that you have the Democrats are unified into spending whatever we need. And they'll be out there saying, in this time, we shouldn't be worried about the deficit. We should be worried about getting the American public through these bad times that they created with the policy that they wish to continue, which is borrowing money that we don't have.
Right.
And the Republicans will come in and say, no, we need to cut. And the American public will not want to hear any of that.
Nope.
Because the American public, by and large, does not care that we are putting what we have wanted on the backs of our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. Americans don't care. That's the biggest problem that Republicans have. And the worst part is many Republicans are trying to do the right thing. But it doesn't matter. The right thing, this is where we get into the abstract. The right thing down the road is not the right thing for the reality that the American people want right now, which is give us money so we can get through this terrible time that you created by spending money that you don't have. Spend more money that you don't have to get me through the next month.
And even in good times, I want you to spend more and more and more.
Right.
I want that immediate gratification because we don't even, as a society, far too many people don't even care about their own personal finances to the extent of setting up proper savings for emergencies and then setting up a 401k for investment or for retirement. So if we don't care about the future us as individuals, we don't care about future generations.
No.
That's never going to be a thing.
And the other thing that I see that, and again, it may just be a couple of people in the Republican Party, but the John McCain problem. We've been calling Josh Hawley, Senator Hawley, we've been calling him John McCain 2.0. Not only because he has proposed a cap on credit card interest rates, which if they're going up, why? Because the government spent too much money. But the fact is, the government has no business regulating capital in the way that Josh Hawley wishes to do it. And then Josh Hawley came out last week. Wall Street Journal had an article on it. We touched on it last week and more information coming out on it. He wants to go back and repeal Citizens United.
Right.
Which would stop corporations. Now, he says that that unions and the NRA and groups that get together that they should be able to have freedom of speech, but only.
And this would be about, for him, this would be about publicly traded companies.
Right. Publicly traded companies should not have free speech rights. That's a load of. I don't want to go through what I went through with Feingold when I worked at our great affiliate KXL back in, this had to be 98 or 99 when he came on to promote his, John McCain remember, corporations aren't people.
Right.
That's not the argument. The argument, as was made, I think Justice Kennedy made it, well, no, corporations are laws set up by the state to regulate business. That doesn't mean those human beings don't have free speech rights. But it's the populist, liberal opinions of somebody who was viewed as conservative like Josh Hawley that I fear also is a huge problem down the road for Republicans.
Well, because it reeks of George W. Bush at the end of 2008. And then later telling some of our colleagues, and I think it even got out in the media, he had invited a few of our people we know in the talk radio industry to the White House in his final days of office. I know that I didn't always adhere to my principles. And he had said at one point, sometimes you have to abandon your principles.
No, you don't.
No, that's actually when you adhere to them is in the worst of times because you can't stop the pain. It's how you deal with the pain. You can't go back to the Clinton administration, 1999, and putting the whole subprime mortgage thing into action. You can't go back and change that. You can't go back. There's no time machine that's going to go back and prevent or change what happened. It's about how you deal with it. And if you have conservative principles, and you and I talked about that situation, well, we probably would have seen a harder recession for a shorter period of time.
Well,
but we would have known
right.
where the bottom is. And when you say, well, I'm going to, or when you act, when you behave in a manner that is abandoning your conservative principles, I have to question them to begin with.
Well, it galls me when I see Josh Hawley, Hawley, going after the Biden administration for censoring and denying people free speech rights, and he's actively promoting the bogus, unconstitutional proposition. And by the way, he's trying to make this a constitutional amendment. It's not going to go anywhere, but it's what he's trying to push in order to become more popular, which is a liberal talking point of, well, no, free speech shouldn't apply here because it may be negative. And so the government should decide what free speech is. So on one hand, he's talking out of both sides of his mouth as he's talking about the Biden administration trying to find a way to censor people and deny people free speech. He's proposing denying people free speech and using the same argument that the absolute most liberal Democrats used over the last 25 years with McCain-Feingold.
Right.
Everybody has freedom of speech rights. You don't lose your freedom of speech rights because you say, the government has set up these rules and regulations to enter business. I'm going to do that with other people,
right?
And we're going to become publicly traded, but we have a board. We have a board, and we have people that run this company, and then Republicans come in who claim they're conservatives, really poser conservatives, and start saying, you don't have your free speech rights to promote what's best for your company.
Right.
So we're gonna limit. Senator Hawley, I'm going to limit free speech rights for what I feel is justifiable to get rid of free speech rights. It's bogus.
Well, it is. Again, this is when you start compromising the principles, the very principles of of what the founders intended. When you talk about free speech rights, and then saying, which is why he wanted to amend the Constitution with it.
Well, he has to because he can't get by.
You can't get by the free speech rights,
right?
Or the decision on Citizens United. You would have to go back and change all. But here's the problem: he knows you'll never get a constitutional amendment like that passed. So why are you? You're doing it purely for positioning.
Yep.
Politically.
Yep.
Why in the world would you want to do that?
Well, he's trying to become a populist now.
Why would you want to die on that hill? Because you see people going through pain. And again, it goes back to the same kind of mindset of a George W. Bush. Well, it's time to abandon, my conservative principles.
Well, it's the same arrogance that you get from Democrats who say we can control an economy, and Senator Hawley's doing the same thing with his credit card bill of we need to cap credit card, 17 or 18% or something like that. We need to do it. That, I'm from the government, and I know because I'm promoting myself as somebody that opposes these liberals, so I'll promote a liberal philosophy and frame it as populist conservative where I can control the capital better. That if I, Senator Hawley, get to control the capital of the banks, then the system will run much better and you will have less problem in your life. It's a load of horse manure.
Because we know the ultimate effect.
Yeah.
You put a cap on it, then rates are going to, and we've seen this happen with any type of government cap on pricing. you'll see those rates, even people with the best of credit, it will hover right at 18%.
And like I said, I'm framing this in the problem that because I think he's more blunt in proposing things that are the most absolute liberal things that have been promoted in the past that he is trying to reframe as conservative Republican.
Right.
That's going to be a problem for the Republican Party.
Right.
And I don't think anybody else has called Hawley out on it.
No.
Except our show. I don't know anywhere. I've checked to see if anybody has called him out on. Well, the Wall Street Journal has.
Yeah.
And probably National Review has. But in the other conservative media, I don't think anybody even knows it's happening. They haven't even thought about it. You and I instantaneously went, what? No. Stop it. Stop being a liberal and trying to frame yourself. Don't say you're one thing when you're actually another thing.
Exactly.
Don't say you're conservative when you're a liberal.
Right.
On those issues.
Right.
He may be conservative on others, but on those, he is as liberal as you could possibly get, actually to the point of more socialist.
Yeah.
I'm going to control the Capitol. If I get to do it, if Republicans get to control the Capitol, the Republicans can run the economy better than the Democrats. No, I don't want any of you damn fools running the damn economy.
Well, and again, we've seen that attempt over and over again. This is the problem with the Republican Party. If we're at a point where, and we asked the question, we've been asking the question for a few years now, how many true conservatives actually exist in office?
Not many.
It's very few.
And a lot fewer in the Republican Party. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
You start blending together with the Democrats. What's the difference?
And that's been going on for far too long. Yep. And now we're at the point where there's a handful, maybe. Mm-hmm. I think at one point, we came up with a total of 1 2/8. I guess that would be a fourth.
Is that because we gave Rand Paul a half?
Or something like that.
Or three-quarters because he had come out. What was that?
It was on the SALT tax.
The SALT tax, yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And then he said, well, the citizens in the states, my colleagues' states of California and New York would be disproportionately affected, blah, blah. And we were like, when did Rand Paul care about New York or California?
And then we found out
in that kind of state. Because he knew what the problem was.
Yeah. And
then it was like, oh, you mean your state?
Yep.
Which is exactly what was behind it.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Uncompensated detention at docks frustrates drivers of all stripes. If you're an owner-operator, you have at least some control over the matter. Make the subject a standard part of your rate and/or contract negotiations on the front end. You can use your own numbers to calculate an hourly rate to compensate for lost income opportunity, as well as fixed costs, which don't stop when the truck stops. Those two elements of a fair detention rate were deemed appropriate by most of Overdrive's audience almost a decade ago. We've used income, fixed costs, and miles average of our owner-operator business services from ATBS's clients to compute an average $64 an hour detention rate then. And 10 years later, the figure is $83 an hour. Use your own numbers to calculate your rate. A simple conversation with any broker or shipper or your carrier if you're leased about what you're putting in the rate might yield results you don't expect. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics.
Brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. So there, with being a year out now from the election of 2024, which is going to be huge, that's the challenge and the problems for Republicans there, as we just laid out in the last segment. So.
Right. I think if you look at the challenges that they had, again, a total of roughly 4 weeks of this year has been spent on finding a Speaker of the House. That's, I think, indicative of what the 24 challenges are going to be for the party. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what the districts right now that are out there, I don't know how they're viewing this. I don't know how many independents might vote differently in a district that is not red at the moment. It's going to be interesting to watch how they campaign.
You're a threat to democracy if you don't download our app, Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thanks so much for being here. All right, looking here at some of the polling numbers out. The CNN poll that came out was really interesting. 55% support a border wall.
My, how times
I'm sorry,
have
that
changed.
was a Siena
poll. Yeah.
That was the Siena poll.
Yeah.
Okay. 55% support it. You had the CNN poll come out, Biden's lowest approval number, tied for his lowest approval. This here from, where did I get this from? Okay. Hang on here. Okay, this story is from Breitbart, but they didn't do the poll. A near majority of American voters believe that former President Donald Trump's top economic focus is to bring down the price of goods, which they say is their top concern, according to a poll. In contrast, under a quarter believe that Joe Biden is more concerned with creating jobs. The Democratic strategy group Blueprint and YouGov poll, first shared with Semaphore, shows that a majority, 64%, see the lowering of prices on goods, services, and gas in the wake of 40-year high inflation as their most pressing economic focus. Higher wages, and this is the Democrat strategy group, 64% see that lowering the price of goods, services, and gas in the wake of 40-year high inflation as their most pressing economic focus. Higher wages came in at a distant second at 20%. Lowering interest rates and creating more jobs drew the fewest responses at 9% and 7%, respectively. And that sort of blows Senator Hawley's balloon on that one, huh? There it is again. This is the Democrat strategy group Blueprint, and a YouGov poll first shared with Semaphore. The website shows 64% see the lowering of the prices of goods, services, and gas in the wake of 40-year high inflation as their most pressing economic need. However, voters do not consider reducing prices a top two issue in the Biden agenda. While only 7% of voters think more jobs is the top economic concern, and you know why? People that really want a job have a job.
Yeah.
Well, we're creating more jobs. I got a job. You got a job? You got it. I got it. Okay. Yeah, there's more jobs than there are people.
No, that's a good point in that if the administration were out there saying, look, we're creating all these jobs with high unemployment in place, that would resonate with some because it would give them hope that a job is going to come their way. If you're already employed, it doesn't matter what the administration says about creating jobs because it doesn't affect people.
Only 23% think he regards lowering the cost of goods, services, and gas as his main economic focus. 9% believe he sees lowering interest rates in that light. Now, at least Josh Hawley has something in common with Biden there with those 9%. Conversely, 49% of voters say Trump's chief priority is to lower the price of goods and services, followed by creating more jobs at 24%. Another 15% say lowering interest rates takes precedent for Trump, while 12% believe higher wages do. Respondents were also asked to grade the performance of Bidenomics as good or bad on each of the economic issues: more jobs, higher wages, lower prices on goods and services, lower gas prices, and lower interest rates in mortgages and credit cards. The Biden economic branding only received a positive net rating in the more jobs department, with 55% saying Bidenomics does well in this area and 45% saying it performs poorly. In comparison, voters were split regarding its ability to raise wages at 50% good and 50% bad. From there, 56% of voters say Bidenomics has done a lousy job in lowering the cost of goods, services, and gas prices, the top issue for voters. Notably, Democrats in swing districts have been careful to steer clear of the term Bidenomics. You know the interesting thing? Now, Trump's, look, he's got the trials and everything going on. What is the things that you and I, he has talked about energy. And I think if he wishes to counteract that should be part of his campaign. We're going to produce natural gas. We're going to produce oil. We are going to have the lowest energy prices in the world because we're producing it here. And we're producing it here, which means more great jobs, but it will lower the cost of not just oil and natural gas, but it will lower the cost of everything across the board because that is used in the production of almost everything. Mm-hmm. But when Trump talks about a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the United States, he's talking about increasing inflation 10% overnight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
I mean, it's because that's one of his biggest things. I will put a tariff on all goods coming into the United States, 10%. Well, that's an instant 10% raise, and the public apparently hasn't been informed of that one. Because you think
or they don't believe you'll get it done. They believe it's one of those empty promises. And I mean that for protectionists. It's one or the other.
Because that's what I think he should focus on. Because that would be the next question. How would Trump lower prices? Tariffs would increase prices.
Well, what it comes down to is, and we talked about this the other night, is people live in the past. There's a reason that those memes of former presidents that say, "Miss me yet?" resonate with people. Because people want to look back and say, and in this case they can, up until COVID, the Trump administration years were great. The economy was expanding. You saw, everything was where it needed to be. Now, we can point out, okay, there were still some things that were in the fire that could have blown up because 0% interest wasn't going to last forever.
Right.
But you get up to the point of COVID and people in their minds say, no, I was much better off. And I think that's where you have it. That's the problem for the Democrats with inflation. And by the way, it's also going to be a problem for the next president, including whoever it is, including Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah.
Because prices won't come down unless it's for the very wrong reason, or the bad reason of a deep recession. We've never seen actual true deflation except one time, and that was during the Great Depression. Well, you're not going to see that likely. You're going to see recessions. Those come and go, but not to the point of drastically bringing prices down, not to the point, certainly, of restoring the spending power of Americans and what they had during those years in Trump. Because that's the other part of it is, all right, what's another remedy? If we could greatly expand the economy, right, and really get the GDP cooking, this is a huge if. It would, in order to do that, what would be required? The reason it's a huge if, what would be required is a hell of a lot more humans to work the jobs as a nation. And think about this, because Trump was talking legal immigration with Jim Acosta the day that Jim Acosta got thrown out. That's actually what they were discussing at that time. And Trump was saying, look, I think we need more legal immigration. But Americans don't want that right now. And the reason they don't want that is because that topic has been burned by the open borders that we have under the current administration. So you're not going to get that political will to open the doors. We're not creating new humans because we're not procreating as a society. The birth rate is ultimately low. So delivering on whether it's an implied promise that people have in their head or just confidence that they have in him getting it done, I think the economy will improve. But it won't be to the extent that it was during his first term if he becomes president.
No, I mean, and that's why when you ask, what, as a political consultant, if I'm a political consultant and he keeps me on board for a week or two before he fires me.
An hour or two.
I would simply tell him, shut up about the tariffs.
Yeah.
Because right now, when you look at it, America's this, and this comes from the Democrats. And that's why, if you think about it, that came out this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so that went through Democratic circles like crazy. Right. The biggest problem is inflation.
Well,
it's inflation, and it's major, and most people believe that the vast majority believe Trump will come in and he can lower prices. Well, how do you do it? Because the only way you can do it, you pointed out the problems. We don't have the labor force to drastically increase the GDP, but we do have the ability to ramp up oil, natural gas, big time, and drastically lower the world oil prices and natural gas prices, which would definitely help expand the economy and lower prices. But I would tell him, stop talking about a 10% tariff on everything coming into the United States. You're telling that you're vulnerable. Then you're telling America that they're looking at you, because that poll is really important. They're looking at you. Yeah. When they say to make the economy better, no, they're looking at you to lower prices.
And then we have to look at it, and it's interesting because you and I have looked at. We were talking about where Nikki Haley in the one poll was performing in Wisconsin far better than Trump was. In fact, Trump was underwater by 2 points against Biden, and she was up by 14.
14.
And when you look at the independents, there's the question I would have. We've talked about this. Farmers didn't like the whole tariff thing because they wanted their trade routes reestablished the way they were. Tariffs caused a lot of pain for them. Well, you see a lot of those independent voters are in those farming states. What did you see from Iowa? The governor endorsing DeSantis. Why is that? I'd like to know. I really would. I'd like to know if she heard from the farmers in that state that we're concerned about Trump putting more tariffs in. Even if he didn't do 10% across the board, would he do enough, again, to put us in peril and to compromise our trade routes? And we don't want that. Even when there was government money going to help them, they said, no, we would rather have the trade routes established. We want a strong trade route reestablished, and we don't want these tariffs.
But that's an easy one because the tariffs are temporary. The trade routes are much longer lasting.
Exactly.
Because you're in business then.
Right.
You're not being subsidized.
And once you disrupt it and they establish new sources, those farmers are going to be hurt for a long, long time.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I think two things will come out of last night. That's my gut tells me two things. We'll tell you that coming up following the top of the hour. One about Biden and one about Trump.
And we'll also tell you why it matters.
Why Red Eye matters. Like we're making fun of the website Axios. It always tells a story and says why this matters.
Why it matters. All right.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, 866-90-RED-EYE. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning, welcome, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
All right, two things my gut tells me might come out of last night's election results.
All right.
Number one, Biden is definitely going to run.
Mm-hmm.
The celebration at the White House over the victory of Beshear, an incumbent in Kentucky, was huge.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a number of things on social media. Why are they getting so excited? Because I think that they view these state elections as approval of Bidenomics and the Biden plan and the Biden economy and everything.
Mm-hmm.
They buy into delusion on a consistent basis. And so I believe they're looking at this and going, yep, this is the evidence that people are happy with what we're doing. I really do. I really think this is a thing that will push him over the top, where if anybody, on his staff was trying to nudge him out, or if that talk was there, that's, I just think that was, they were looking for anything, because they haven't had a positive anywhere that they could point at. Nothing.
No, I mean, we asked the question yesterday. I've asked it many times, but tell me what's working. Well, if their party is winning elections elsewhere, they look at that, and I think you're right. I don't see Biden's arrogant ego allowing him to step down. I just haven't seen that. But certainly now, I think you'll see this renewed effort to, call people like David Axelrod and tell them to hush, shut up, quit talking. No more talk like this. Biden's the guy. No more talking. And it doesn't matter the price of a California governor in China doesn't even factor in. And I wouldn't be surprised if they made a call to, Sacramento. Hey, dude, slow your roll. You're not the guy. You're not going to be the guy. Biden's the guy. Don't go to China. You already know how to be a communist. You can stay right where you are, and you're not going to be president.
So that's my one gut thing is this will really, push over the next couple of months at least where there is no talk about that at all. Mm-hmm. That and they'll be fighting back, and I'm sure you're going to hear it tomorrow. Well, we think that, you saw the great success in Virginia taking the House back, Democrats taking the House and the victory in Kentucky and the victory of the abortion proposition in Ohio. These are the things that we stand for, and it shows that the American public supports the Democrats and they support the Biden administration.
Right.
I think that's what you'll see. The other thing that I think comes out of yesterday, out of the abortion constitutional amendment in Ohio, is that Trump will talk about it and say, look, it was decided on the federal level. The right place for it is the states. And if Republicans wish to bring it up, then he'll go right back to what he said before. I will find a compromise that will satisfy America on it. But we believe it should go back to the states and should not be a federal issue. And therefore, you take it off the table.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
And the reason I say this is normally you couldn't do this because you would see an erosion of conservatives. But he already said it, and he wasn't affected in the primary at all.
No.
Nothing.
Nope.
There was nothing.
No.
Not a 2-point or 3-point drop in any of the polls for him from the Republican side. The Republicans did not care that he said, I'll come up with a compromise that everybody will like on abortion. And that the abortion law in Florida is much too radical, and there was no blowback from the pro-life conservatives in the Republican Party. Somebody might have said something, but it didn't show in the polls at all.
And I'm convinced the only way that he's not going to be the nominee is if he drops out. If he decides not to run. It's Frank Luntz was yesterday, or maybe happened on the day before, maybe on CNN, talking about, look, other primary GOP contenders are performing in the general polls right now better than he is. And he said, but he's going to be the guy, which is true. But I would say, too, first of all, these polls are a year out. Second of all, when it's down to 2, Trump versus Biden, those polls will shape up very differently. Now, we don't know where the confidence will be from independents. We don't. Because if you look at the one poll showing Nikki Haley really performing and outperforming Donald Trump in a number of states, that points to independents supporting someone who's, perceived more as a moderate. And I don't know if that changes when it's down to 2. Because ultimately, you get down to the issues, and people are, by then, will still be screaming. They are now, I think, but they will still. It's only going to get worse when it comes to the reduction in spending power of American families, the impact of inflation between now and November 5th of next year. It's only going to get worse, and people in their minds will want to go back to when prices were lower. And in their minds, they believe or hope desperately, one of the two, or maybe somewhere in between, that the next guy or another guy is going to bring that. And the guy will be Donald Trump.
I saw a couple of articles over the last couple of weeks that said the raises are done in the private sector.
Yeah,
that they can't. They've reached the limit where new hires. They're not actively going after new hires to pay them a lot more money coming in.
Right. It is happening for the upper demos, which many predicted. To retain the upper demos with experience,
yes,
companies are paying more, but that was predicted by one economist at the end of 22. They said, look, this shift will be very good for those who have more experience, the older workers that are out there, but it's not going to be great for younger workers. And they pointed out that dynamic, dangling that carrot to get them on board. They pretty much have maxed that out.
And that's what the articles were saying, that it's basically been maxed out. So when you look over the next year, we go out a year from now, what isn't going to change? People's thoughts of inflation are not going to change.
Right.
In fact, they're only going to get worse because you're going to go through another year of this.
Exactly.
And the potential of having a recession now, according, to the so-called experts, is greater than it was last week and greater than it was a month ago and greater than it was 3 months ago and 4 months ago.
Right.
They're calling that a recession, might happen. And so not good.
No.
And there is nothing, when you see the poll that was done by the Democrats, the Democratic Strategy Group Blueprint, and YouGov, that showed 64% see lowering the prices of goods, services, and gas in the wake of inflation as their most pressing economic focus. And overwhelmingly, they believe Biden can't get the job done, Trump can. That's huge.
Yeah.
Because that goes on for another year. That's 64, might be 70 or 72 by then.
Yep.
There is nothing that Biden can do. There is nothing that Biden will do that will lower inflation. Nothing.
Right.
There's nothing he can do. We talked about Trump. If they have this belief in Trump, what should he be promoting? That I'm going to drill like crazy for oil and natural gas.
Expanding the economy.
We are going to lower the price of energy, which is going to help everybody across the board. It will lower the cost of goods and services, things that use petroleum in your everyday life, thousands of things that will go down.
Yep.
And that's, you pound on that. What else? You pound on to lower inflation. I would be reduced spending, but I don't see either of the presidential candidates coming. I don't see Trump coming out and saying, I'm going to be cutting this and I'm going to be cutting this and I don't see that happening.
No. Again, it all comes back to expanding the economy. If you, on any of these fronts, in order to increase the spending power of families, in order to increase revenue, tax revenue going into the coffers, all of that is because spending is not going to be cut. And there's not going to be, you got a handful of conservatives on Capitol Hill that want to do it, but there's not going to be this huge calling for it and campaign promises geared toward that. So the one thing you can do is come in with deregulation, come in with executive moves
right.
on allowing more leases or expanding drilling and move to that end, especially if the Republicans maybe gain a few seats in the House and possibly gain the Senate. Those are huge asterisks right now, but he can come in with executive orders on regulations and certainly change a lot of that. And that's what you look to do. Expanding the economy is going to be crucial, and the Democrats don't have any interest in doing that.
Again, expanding the economy is going to be limited because, as you said before, we don't have the workforce to do it. But expanding the economy in oil and natural gas, you can do.
That's exactly
right.
where
Right.
I was going toward it, and that is because the process.
But my only point is, it needs to be phrased not expanding the economy, but I'm going to lower prices.
Yes,
That's how you've got to be direct.
Yeah,
because
right.
that's the concern.
Well,
so I'm going to lower prices, lower prices, lower
which is
prices.
a massive campaign promise. Now, the thing about issuing a campaign promise from someone like Donald Trump is that he won't have a third term to worry about unless something drastically changes.
Well, look, you make
he will be, if he's reelected, he will be in his last term, and so
wait a minute, Biden was going to cure cancer.
I know, but that's the difference. Republicans are actually held to it. We know the standard. We've been doing this a long time, and it's true. When you make a campaign promise as a Republican, read my lips. No new taxes.
Then what you do is you explain how an economy works. You say we're going to go in and we're going to lower the price of oil and natural gas, which will help the economy across the board because 1,432 products that you buy each and every day have petroleum in it. We're going to help to lower the price that way, and that makes that makes sense to people. You're not going to. You promise, you say, my goal is to lower prices. Here's what we do. Mm-hmm. Now, whether it's a promise or not, promises are made all the time, and that's why I said I brought up the whole cancer thing.
You can make the promise that you're going to improve the economy because those are some simple moves that's going to happen.
Right.
And administratively, they can do a hell of a lot in terms of deregulating, and those are the things you look to do. You can make those very simple promises and deliver on them. It really kind of goes back to, it's similar to 2016 in a way that we said, look, at that moment, and I think right now, I think it applies in 24 on the economy, you don't have to get into details. You don't have to get into the weeds on it with the voter. You may have to do that if, depending on who the moderator is at the debate, because questions will be, well, exactly what is your plan? Give us all 20 points of your plan. But the American voter is not going to be listening for that. They're going to be listening to, I'm going to improve the economy. I will get that done.
Well,
and that's something that you can promise and actually deliver on.
Well, luckily, the media isn't going to get into the minutia of it. It would be sort of like if they're talking about Trump. So you say that you're going to lower gas prices. How will you do that without having an insurrection like on January 6th?
Yes. How will you do that and also remain a bigot? Or, I mean, those are going to be the questions. And that's only if Chris Wallace is one of the moderators.
I like that. How are you going to drill for more oil and still be a racist?
Those are the, that's and that's the insanity that you can expect.
Are you going to drill for white oil?
Right, exactly.
Gold?
Who owns that land? We know about federal land, but what about the other land and who? But those are the that's a promise that he can deliver on, and people buy it. I mean, they'll believe it. Number one, because they still put that confidence in him as somebody who has decades and decades and decades of business experience, and also the fact that they've seen it happen under his presidency before. So that's something he can deliver.
No, that's a great point, yeah.
And something that also, again, we talked about this, makes him stand out more than anybody else in the GOP field right now.
Because that's a total rarity in modern American politics.
It is.
A president where they can go, well, when I was in office, this is what happened.
Right.
You've had a few governors do that, but you haven't had a president in modern times who can say, they can go, look what he did to the economy and look where it was when I was there.
Exactly.
And they go, that's right, it was better there.
He can point to his own record.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So, yeah, I mean, that's when you look, and we're just doing this because we're a year out now. We're a year out, and things can change drastically. But you were just talking about, we were talking about the lead that Trump has right now. I can't even fathom if, and that's why when I stated, when he said that about abortion and nothing happened at all, I went, nah, it's bigger than even the issues to the people in the Republican Party right now voting for him.
Yep. Nothing is going to happen unless he decides to drop out.
Yeah.
Nothing is going to change. I believe he will be the nominee, and I don't think there's I think the more you look at it, we were looking at you and I off the air talking about others in the field, DeSantis and Nikki Haley and Chris Christie. Chris Christie wants to be there just so he has a place on the stage or a place on CNN or a place somewhere that he can just go after Trump. That's his only reason for running. Nikki Haley performing well head-to-head in the polls against a Biden is going to keep her in longer. DeSantis has money. That he'll stay in. But the fact of the matter is that as you see, this thing's shaping up, I don't know what it looks like, again, with the money as you get into Iowa, as you get into closer to Super Tuesday, what that looks like. Because the fact of the matter is that are you going to spend your money? Are the donors going to spend their money on candidates that don't have a shot? Or do you wait and spend your money on the party and just support the nominee? And the numbers aren't changing. If they haven't changed by now, they're not going to change for Donald Trump.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So where are we going now? Because everybody, we live in a nation that, because I saw it on social media. Oh, no, what's going to happen is everything is doom and gloom. Well, actually, the fact that we're doomed, there is a positive to that. And the positive to we're doomed is the fact that reality has now kicked in. Biden can get elected next year. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in the long run who is elected if we don't practice fiscal responsibility. Just to put this into perspective, I think I'm doing this generally. The budget right now, the United States budget is $6 trillion.
Yeah,
we have a $2 trillion deficit. That's 33%. We're financing 33% every year because, as we found out yesterday, Bloomberg, we finally hit over $1 trillion from late October of 2022 to late October of 2023. Now, that's not the fiscal year. That would be from the beginning of October. But we borrowed so much money in October where we actually hit $1 trillion of interest. That's taxpayer dollars that go for nothing except to service the debt.
Yep.
And to make me richer when I get my Treasury bills.
Right.
Because that's what you're doing. You're paying off the interest on the, you're paying the interest on the debt, which doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere for any services to government whatsoever. You're simply servicing the debt on that. So you've got that going on right now. Inflation isn't going to go down. You're going to have the push to spend even more money. The Bloomberg article was talking about, all right, who's going to buy this debt? We got to increase the interest rates. Yeah. And as the fiscal situation of the United States keeps getting worse because we're paying more interest on the debt, the overall debt in general, and this is where it may hit next year if we go into a recession and you have the revenue go down, that the debt even becomes bigger. You're talking about, because we've now reached that benchmark where in a year period, now it wasn't the fiscal year, but still in a year period, we had $1 trillion in interest on the debt.
Right.
That's never happened before. Never happened. So think about this. If we have a $2 trillion debt, 50%, if we have a $2 trillion deficit, half of that deficit is now just interest on the debt.
Yeah. Right.
And so when you look at where we're headed, because what are we going to do with the budget? Because now that we have $1 trillion, now that we've reached that benchmark, and it may fluctuate over the next few months. We may borrow less in November, so from November to November, it may be a little bit less. But the fact is it keeps going up because we keep borrowing money. You're not going to have the Fed. The Fed cannot put the interest rates down to zero so we can print money and buy our own debt, which means you're going to have to find people to buy the debt, which means it's going to cost more, and interest rates on Treasury bills that are now way over where they were a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
What are they?
Yeah.
30, 40, 50 times higher? Because the interest was nothing. Remember, it was
Right.
0.01.
Right.
And you do the ratio of that to paying 5%. And we had stated, we had warned a long time ago, this is what was going to happen. But you look at that and you say, all right, now that we have $1 trillion, that cuts into hundreds of billions of dollars in spending that can't be spent anymore. Well, you have to spend it for Social Security and Medicare. And somehow in the next couple of years, you're going to have to fix that. You cannot solve the problem by getting rid of foreign aid and wasteful spending. That is a delusion that Democrats believe, and also the majority of Democrats believe that, and the majority of Republicans believe that, and it is false. And it's going to be a wake-up call when they realize that, we can't do this. Now, the good part about that is, if there's a good part in all this doomation talk, is the fact that things that they're going to have to cut, they can't cut Social Security, they can't cut Medicare. That's not going to happen. There'd be too much of an outrage. They may have to raise taxes on it. They, might raise the cap, make it an unlimited cap, that you have to keep, paying on it. They might means test. They might raise the age a little bit, a couple of months every year, as they've been doing here for a while. But how high do you raise it?
Well, if they go and hit employers, then employers are going to adjust by adjusting pay.
Yeah, we talked about that too. But that's how you get out of it. You say, okay, now the employers are going to pay 15% more.
Politically, that's going to be your first move.
But what can
make big corporations and the rich pay more?
But what do you cut? You know what you can cut? You can cut all the subsidies for EVs. You can cut all the subsidies for wind and solar. And you let those become self-sufficient again by producing the products that Americans want. They're going to be forced to do that, just like, because it's not going to work. We know it's not going to work. How do we know? Europe.
Mm-hmm. Well,
they're a couple of years ahead of us on it.
That's the thing, too, is that you think to yourself, okay, where's the political headwind on that? And it's environmentalists. But the environmentalists don't have the voice that they once had on that issue. And that has changed over this summer. In recent months, that has been a huge shift. Because you look at it and the demand is just slowing greatly. Well, when that's the case, then everybody looks at it and says, well, yeah, we don't need to be pouring a bunch of money into something that's not working. Environmentalists are still going to speak out, but they're not going to have the political positioning that they had before. The point being is that politically, you have a greater chance at doing away with those subsidies, I think, than probably ever right now. And we'll see where that goes. Certainly between now and 2032, you will, because we'll be getting closer to those deadlines, and everyone will know. There's no way to meet the deadlines. The mandates have to be repealed, and we can't be pouring money into something that's losing money. It's losing money as we pour money into it. We're going to quit pouring money into it. That dynamic will play out. There's no way it won't.
And I guess that's the overall umbrella point that I was trying to make, is that reality is now hitting all the delusional fantasies we have had of what we can do with money and how we can play with money in our society. And there's nothing you can do about the reality of economics. It's going to hit one way or another.
Yep.
And that's why it's going, and people are going to suffer because of it. People will suffer because of it.
And they also make comparisons. They will say, well, wait a minute, why are we giving money to EV companies when they should be giving money to people who are having to deal with inflation, that people that can't make, this is the way they think. It should be, we should be using, this is politically how those things essentially rise to the top, rise to the surface, and actually get done, because you'll look at it, and that's, by the way, will be one of the sells. We could better use this taxpayer money to blah, 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 blah. Well, no one wants to hear cut spending. But they will say, hey, quit giving that money over there where it's going down the toilet and start giving it to the people. They think that way. That's the way they think. That if you don't spend it over there, you'll spend it over here where it benefits me directly. The rich and the EV OEMs are all getting the money on those things. I should be getting money. They shouldn't be getting money. It doesn't work that way, but politically, that's the reality. And I don't know what happens over the next 4 to 8 years. But the movement we have seen just during the Biden administration tells me it will be a monumental shift. There's no way it won't be. There's just no way it won't be. There either has to be a change where the economy is turning around and we're improving the economy, which still won't, I don't believe it will be to the point that it needs to be. When you and I talk about expanding the economy, it's not, I don't have the faith that we will be able to get it done to the point of making up for lost ground, because it has to be coupled with spending cuts. And when you say cuts, people turn off. And those are the things that, again, where the conversation has to change. We talked about the GOP and how they promote, how they campaign. And reality is here. You and I have been talking for how many years about getting to the point closer and closer to where we can no longer service the interest on the national debt. Well, now, in a 1-year period, $1 trillion.
Yeah.
News came out also that $1.03 trillion in personal credit card debt, and they point to the things we've been talking about. People spent their savings, and now they're spending on credit cards. And those credit cards are expensive. And when those payments come due on the personal level, this is why I said, if people don't care about, pulling back when it comes to their own personal debt, they don't care about the national debt. They're underwater at home. Anything else going on right now, they're not hearing. And that's where you get to a recession point. Also, you see where the the Treasury yields and bonds dropping here in recent days, and the stock market going up. Well, what does that tell you? Well, the Fed is going to have to pay attention to that because we're still not on top of inflation. And while there wasn't a change in November, there's going to have to be a change in interest rates to the point that it hits the brakes harder on the economy. And I think that is coming. I don't have confidence in Jerome Powell, but reality, I think, will hit the Fed as well, especially after the first of the year.
When it comes to economics, I hate to be cliche here and quote Barry Corbin from No Country for Old Men, but you can't stop what's coming.
Exactly. No, you can't. You just can't.
Yeah. When you play and you have an electorate that puts people into office that tells you that they can control capital and they can control an economy and they can spend and they can manipulate the dollar to a success, you're a fool for voting that way.
Yeah.
Because now we're seeing, I don't know how you get out of this without a ton of suffering.
Yeah. No,
And-
it will be a great deal of pain.
And you see how quickly it accelerates.
Yeah,
It's like all of a
right.
sudden, boom,
Yeah.
$1 trillion in interest on the debt.
Right.
Boom, that came out of nowhere. Nobody was expecting that yet.
Right.
But that's what happens. You talk about compound interest.
Yeah.
When a savings
Oh,
account,
yeah. Yep.
the compounding of interest also relates to if you keep borrowing more money.
Exactly. Because you're not caring about the principal at all, and interest rates are going up. There's no way it's not going to get worse and worse a lot quicker than expected.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So, yeah, there's a there's a little bit of a thought of what might happen over the next year and over the next couple of years. What might happen in the next big election a year from now?
Well,
What might we be talking about a year from now?
wow. Wow. What will it be like in the event that Trump wins? Think about this. The media, just like Hillary Clinton in 2016, didn't want to believe it for days. But there will be a different kind of reckoning, I think, if he's to win this time based on what's going on right now under the Biden administration.
An insurrection?
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, 866-90 Red Eye. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Now, this happened
Yeah?
last night.
On this vote, the yeas are 234 and the nays are 188, with 4 answering present. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
There you go. That's House of Representatives officially censured Democratic Representative Tlaib for promoting false narratives regarding the October 7th, 2023 Hamas attack on Israel and calling for the destruction of the state of Israel. That's officially in it. 22 Democrats joined Republicans yesterday. 184 Democrats voted against it. So it was interesting watching some of the speeches yesterday.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. we have to have the conversation about radicals serving in office. But we have to have the conversation. That implies that people have been paying attention all this time because the radicals have been there for a while. And it's not just one topic, one issue that they hold radical views on. But then you go back to what's the makeup of the district that they serve in? Because that's what it comes down to. How many radicals are part of American society? How many radicals are active politically?
Well, we're getting to know now, aren't we?
It's very, very clear. And this is why the 24 season, I am so curious as to how you shape your campaign. Not just the ads. Because I don't expect the ads to be maybe as blatant. Although they might be. I might be surprised by that. But it will be the campaign stops. It will be the campaigning at home where you're going to hear it more and more. And we have seen this. And since October 7th, everything has changed. And the radicals are proud to be radicals. They're behaving that way. And more, that's what you're going to continue to see. Because they seemed hell-bent on, as always, getting their way, which includes getting reelected. Are there going to be any challengers to the radicals that hold office right now? Successful challengers? I have my doubts.
I want to play. This is, we had talked about it earlier. This is Chip Roy. Yesterday, as members of Congress were speaking on the censuring of Representative Tlaib.
I thank the gentleman from Georgia for his time. And with respect to the gentleman from Maryland, I understand the perspectives with respect to free speech. And I certainly wish to always stand aside the protection of free speech in this country. But this goes well beyond that, because we're not talking about restraining the gentleladies from Michigan's ability to speak as an American citizen. We're not talking about punishing her, putting her in jail. What we're talking about is whether a member of the United States House of Representatives, whether a member of this body representing this nation is justified in putting forward a defense of the actions of Hamas terrorists that murdered innocent Israeli citizens, is holding United States citizens and Israelis hostage, and in her own language was defending on October 8th, a mere 24 hours into the brutal and barbaric attacks in which babies were beheaded, babies were placed into ovens, literally. Moms were raped in a house while their babies were put in an oven. A documented account, video evidence. And this is dismissed as resistance to an apartheid state. My problem is that the gentlelady is also referring to, quote, Joe Biden supporting the genocide of the Palestinian people. The gentlelady has put forward that by virtue of the United States of America funding in solidarity the people of Israel in defense of their right to exist, that by virtue of our position as Americans standing in front of that flag in this chamber representing 330 million Americans, that by funding and supporting Israel, we are somehow perpetuating the call for violence that we saw unfold right before our eyes on October 7th in the most brutal and heinous acts that some of us have ever seen. I do not doubt the gentlelady's sincerity of her concern for her home people and concerns about the attacks on the people of Gaza. I had some people who called into question that I would put out my public support for my former colleague, Justin Amash, who lost cousins in a church, receiving missile fire into a building next to a church. I genuinely pray for the people of Israel, the people of Gaza, the people throughout the world that are now dealing with all of this. But the gentlelady cannot, as a member of Congress, be standing up and telling the world that what we saw unfold in attacking Israel is justified. We can't. Free speech matters. I have grave concern right now about where this institution is going with respect to censures. I voted against the censure last week because I thought it had drafting problems, and I thought it had significant concerns it raised. I believe the work that was done by my friend from Georgia here put forward a resolution that is worthy of support. And so I support the resolution and believe that we should pass it.
There you go. By the way, nobody's stopping her from saying anything.
No, this is not a free speech issue.
No, it's not a free speech issue at all. And that was really the only point they were making yesterday, because you couldn't make any other point.
Well, because there is and I think what you hear here is there is a responsibility of those who are representatives and anyone with any influence whatsoever in how they speak. That responsibility goes back prior to October 7th, even on this very issue. Because it's the left, it's the Democrats who conjured fear in people's minds with lies about bigotry. All of that. Georgia election laws. This is Jim Crow 2.0. All of this is meant to be a driver of fear that motivates people in a way. When people act out of fear, it becomes especially dangerous. And we're seeing that play out now. In order to position Hamas as liberators or victims in this case, you have to ignore the atrocities. You have to ignore their own charter and their own words, and especially their own recent actions. You have to ignore it. You have to omit it by just not talking about it, just not acknowledging it at all. And when you lie by omission, you are a liar. And when you conjure up fear, when you motivate people in that way, again, it becomes especially dangerous. And there is very clear and present demonstrations right now of that. We're seeing it play out. That violence isn't new to people who are protesters and rioters on the left. And if you're somebody of influence or a representative on Capitol Hill and you're going to say the things that she has said, there are going to be consequences, not just from within during the censuring process, but also the actions of individuals who are listening to you and believe that this is a growing movement to support Hamas and the elimination of Jews in such cruel fashion. All of this matters. This is not political. This is radical versus non-radical, period. Full stop.
And, there was a few things blew up yesterday. You saw the one, let me just get it here. I actually have it on my phone. The one billionaire hedge fund manager who tears into Harvard's DEI program.
Yeah.
Billionaire hedge fund manager Bill Ackman, also a Harvard alumnus, admitted ignorance towards his old university's so-called diverse and inclusion organizational framework on Monday by criticizing the Ivy League's efforts as anything but inclusive for all marginalized group. Ackman, the CEO of Pershing Square, tore into his alma mater's diversity, equity, and inclusion program during a phone interview with CNBC. He said after reviewing the initiative, it shows favor to specific groups while excluding certain demographics such as Asians or the Jewish community. I've always thought DEI was for all marginalized groups. Okay, my ignorance. If you're an Asian student that is a victim of prejudice at Harvard, you don't contact Harvard's DEI office. They don't work for you, and that is really, really wrong. Ackman further suggested that conservative students at the Cambridge, Massachusetts campus have fallen under the definition of the most marginalized group at Harvard since 2018. DEI efforts have been launched in academic institutions and other major American organizations nationwide in recent years to essentially reduce the level of so-called microaggressions and biases based on environments while requiring more diversity. But those efforts have faced backlash as at least 30 states have considered passing legislation to defund DEI programs in public universities and state agencies. Well, we've talked about the DEI programs are absolutely the most bigoted programs. Corporations now have jumped on. Probably most corporations have an absolutely bigoted DEI program and training that they give their employees.
Yep.
And the assumptions that it makes, and we gave you a few examples a few weeks ago on it when we got into talking about, DEI. Ackman suggested the DEI program should focus on protecting historically marginalized minority groups from the tyranny of the majority. That's what DEI, in my mind, should be about. So there you go. Ackman's latest remarks follow his criticisms against Harvard University's president in a lengthy letter where he accused her of creating an environment where anti-Semitism could thrive and Jewish students attacked by pro-Hamas activists. Well, look, this, I think, in a way, look, it was out there.
Yeah, sure.
It was out there, and the one thing that you and I first said when the polling came out from young people is they felt no shame about it. That's how much they believe in intolerance and bigotry and racism and anti-Semitism. They embrace it fully.
Yep.
And many of them embrace a genocide of Jews.
Yep.
These are Americans that are justifying a genocide. Understand that. And it goes right up to members of Congress.
Yep.
So, but stop the whole thing that this is a free speech issue. It's not. They had nothing else. And all the squad was saying the same thing, that she being denied her free speech.
No,
she was.
She's not.
She could say whatever she wanted to say. And she said it yesterday. She said what she wanted to say.
Yep.
They're simply saying what you're saying is a lie.
Yep.
And what you're saying is anti-Semitism. And it's wrong.
It's irresponsible.
And you're justifying a genocide, and that's reprehensible conduct for a member of Congress in the United States.
Yes.
People can disagree with the final vote. You could disagree. Republicans or Democrats, 184 of them will say, no, we disagree with it.
Mm-hmm.
She should be allowed to say that without criticism from the body, an official criticism from the body as a whole, which is stupid. It's like,
right.
It's like, well, they can make their own rules and regulations, and this fits a censuring behavior.
Yes.
This fits what you get censured for.
Yep.
Absolutely outrageous.
It is. And, it will be interesting to see what these districts do in 24, because the war is not going to be over by Election Day next year.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at JJ Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on speed and space management. When driving, you need to manage the space around your vehicle so that there's enough space to allow you to adjust when traffic conditions change. The space ahead of your vehicle is the most important and one of the easiest to monitor and adjust as needed. One rule of thumb is to allow at least 1 second for each 10 feet of vehicle length at speeds below 40 miles per hour. At greater speeds, add an additional second. It's impossible to keep other drivers from tailgating you, but there are some things you can do to make it safer, such as increasing your following distance, avoiding quick lane changes, and slowing down. There are also several things you should do to ensure that there is plenty of space between the side of your vehicle and other vehicles. Don't hug the center line, avoid hugging the right side of the road, and avoid traveling alongside other vehicles in strong winds, especially crosswinds. This tip was brought to you by JJ Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up, some audio from a Democrat that shows exactly what we have said about Biden is exactly what they know. Mm-hmm. That there isn't a difference of opinion once you get them to be honest about it and about the economic situation. So we'll get to that here in just a little bit. And I'm just reading here, by the way. This was where was this? Who did this? NBC News. The 5-alarm fire, Democratic frustrations with Biden spill into the open. I think you're going to see that drop today because the White House was celebrating the victory in Kentucky, the victory in Virginia, and the Ohio abortion constitutional proposal yesterday. So I really do think that they're going to be emboldened and believe, okay, this proves that the polls are wrong and we're actually doing a great job. We'll get to more of this coming up.
Call in and get a word in edgewise. Eric Harley and Gary McNamara on Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today and listen when and where you want. Let's go to Kenny in Westland, Michigan, as we talk about the censuring of Representative Tlaib last night. Kenny, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Hi.
Hi, fellas. Great show, by the way.
Thanks
for taking my call.
Appreciate it.
Listen, I live in Rashida's district, and it's I think it was Eric right before he went on break. He asked about what it's going to be like in 24 for the election. Fellas, she's going to win again and probably by more. And it's just the name recognition that gets her into office all the time.
Well, no, it's combined name recognition and radicals who support people like her. There are people like her in her district, period.
Yeah, it's not the majority, though. I've lived in
it's enough to get her elected.
It's the majority that vote. She won the last election.
They're supporting a radical. Yeah. That makes you a radical.
Yeah.
Remember,
I agree.
Right.
I agree with
remember
you.
this.
This is a heavy Democratic
right. Remember,
no matter who they run.
In 2018, when she ran the first time, she was blunt that she supports the Palestinian right of return and a one-state solution, which means the elimination of Israel. That was in 2018. Now, she had really no major opposition in that election, but in 2020, she won with people knowing that she wants the elimination of Israel. She won 66% to 34%, while she still became more radical in 2022 last year. She won with 71% of the vote. The majority of the people that vote for her in your district know exactly where she stands and vote for her anyway.
Yep.
That's just the reality of the numbers.
And if you do that, that makes you a radical.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you guys. I'm just telling you what the facts are going to be.
Yep.
She's going to win even more, and the name recognition alone.
Yep.
But it's not name recognition.
It's not just name recognition.
The erroneous part of your argument is that it's name recognition wins everything, and that's not true.
When you say name recognition alone, that is not the truth. We all know who she is, including and especially the people who vote for her. That makes them radicals, full stop.
Right.
There are, and especially after October 7th, as I've been saying from day one, there are the radicals and everybody else. And the voters can decide which side they're going to be on. But we've known this, like I said a minute ago, we've known this since far before October 7th.
It's absolutely embarrassing to have her as representative here.
I'm sure that it is.
Remember when she...
For many that did not vote for her.
Remember when she went to replace Conyers got out due to a sexual harassment scandal.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew he had the most name recognition and didn't run because of the scandal.
Right.
And he would have been defeated because he believed he would have been defeated because of the scandal.
Yep.
So name recognition alone doesn't always... It can win you an election if you don't have radical viewpoints.
Thanks, Ken.
But part of her dominance in that district is based on the fact that the majority of voters, Democrat voters, vote for her because they agree with her.
Yep.
And the one thing about Tlaib that she has been consistent on since the very beginning is the fact that she does not believe that Israel should exist.
Right.
She's not talking about a two-party solution. You know, she's talking one-party solution.
Yeah, the two-state solution.
The two-state solution, when I say party, right. She's not, exactly. She's not. Now, that's impossible because the Hamas
won't accept that.
And the Palestinian leadership don't want that.
No.
And she's part of that mindset, which is Israel needs to be eliminated.
Yes.
And now she's pro-genocide of Jews.
Right. Very clear where she stands, and voters in her district can choose to stand with her or not. Right. If you accept that viewpoint, if you accept that position by her, then you joined her in that.
Well, I mean, it's, you know, the funny thing is because let me play this. There's some audio I want to play here, and this is was on MSNBC. And Obama White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs, and he and another panelist were talking on MSNBC about Biden and saying he's doing such a wonderful job. You know how he's handling the situation in Israel, how he's handled the Ukraine. And it's like he is such an incredible leader here, and he has done such a wonderful job on so many things in the economy. And you're just like, wow. I mean, this is completely and totally, just it's delusional, when they talk about it, because as we stated immediately, we knew exactly where Biden was going to go.
Sure.
On Israel. We called it right at the beginning. He's going to fake full support, and then he knows he's going to get blowback, and he's going to go, well, now he's talking about a 3-day humanitarian pause.
Right.
And Netanyahu just said, nope. We'll talk about it when they release all the hostages.
Right.
Otherwise, not going to happen.
Right.
And Biden's pushing no. Why? Because Biden knows that a significant portion of the Democratic Party is pro-genocide of Jews. End of story. There is no, Eric, you said it day one. There is no gray area middle ground here.
None. Biden is pretending like there's some kind of middle ground, and everyone in his administration is doing the same. Oh, we're not calling for a ceasefire. Yeah, you are. No, we believe Hamas needs to be dealt with.
And understand when he responds to Tlaib, who said, you're going to lose Michigan because my supporters are not going to support you.
Right.
It's already known by her supporters and everybody that Tlaib does not want a negotiated settlement between the Palestinians and the Israelis. They need to come to some type of ceasefire and then a peace agreement. She's on the record. She wants Israel gone.
Right.
It's officially a position of Tlaib.
Yep.
And it's so let's not make excuses for her.
This isn't name recognition.
Or the people that vote for her. There are no excuses. It's not just name recognition. There are Democrats on the polls have showed it.
There cannot be a more important issue right now for someone like her if you're voting in 24 in her district.
Well,
there is nothing that takes precedent over that.
Oh,
nothing.
On the MSNBC interview, too, earlier, they were talking about the fact that, well, if Trump gets back in, democracy is gone. Well, yeah, you got a ton of Democrats supporting a congressperson who believes in a genocide of Jews.
Yeah.
You know, you have a president who lied to the American public about what his generals told him about Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
You have a president that doesn't give a damn about the southern border.
Right.
You know, we can go on and on and on and on with everything, but I want to play this audio here because this is all about we're a year out and the polling that came out on Biden and then the election yesterday and all the spin's going to be interesting over the next couple of days. But here's Robert Gibbs telling you exactly what we have said all along. His advice. After he talked for a while, he said, "I got to be blunt. I got to be blunt about Biden." Here it is.
About this, I think the president needs to stop talking about the fact that America is back. I think he needs to talk about the fact we have a plan to bring America back. We are trying to improve your lives. But the truth is, people, you can't talk your way into having people feel better about the economy. I think this idea of looking at this through economic statistics and saying that the economy is recovered is a danger for people whose lives don't feel different, even though inflation is down over 9 months.
Okay, that's a lie. Inflation is not down over 9 months. The rate of inflation is down over 9 months. That's a very important distinction, is it not, Eric?
Yep.
Okay, continue here. All right, here we go.
It still costs a lot more money to borrow money for a car. It still costs a lot more money to pay your mortgage. And I think you've got to live where people live. And only are you going to have the permission structure, I think, to talk really about democracy in a way that's important.
Yeah. Talk about democracy. By the way, only is the liberal media talking about the end of democracy.
Yeah. Look, you've seen the behavior of this administration. You've seen the behavior of those in charge at the Department of Justice and the FBI, and how they manipulated thought, any dissent, what they called misinformation. Now you see it play out over and over again in the liberal media. The end of democracy. Are you kidding me? Because if nothing had changed, if the Twitter files never happened, if Elon Musk had not bought Twitter, what would we know? You had one statement by Zuckerberg, who said, yeah, the FBI contacted us, but you didn't have the Facebook files All that fell out, and that piece of the puzzle, what Zuckerberg said about the FBI going to them, fell into place because of the Twitter files. Because we discovered all of this. You look at the intimidation, the weaponization of the FBI, the weaponization of the Stanford story that we carried yesterday, the weaponization of social media against American people, and you're worried that if an election doesn't go your way, democracy will end?
Well, no. What they're saying is Trump caused the insurrection, and he wishes to be the forever president.
Well, that's
what
I mean.
Right. That one.
They're extrapolating that out.
Right.
Out of what? Out of what?
Nothing.
Zero. When all the evidence points to the opposite of their side,
right,
intimidating people through the weaponization of everything that I just mentioned. Give me a break.
I know. Because she actually brought it up. The anchor brought it up. She just said, or Trump wanting to be the forever president. It's like, that was something that actually came, remember Trump wouldn't give up the presidency if he lost.
Exactly.
That was way back. And they're still on that now.
Right.
Just pulled that out of their hat.
Right.
And
exactly.
you can sit there, as you just did, and say, wait a minute, what about the weaponization of law enforcement against American citizens?
Right.
Not getting their due process rights. What about the two-tier system of justice that exists right now?
Right.
Look what's happened during the Democratic administrations with the IRS, the FBI, the Department of Justice, the whistleblower FBI agents saying we just couldn't sit in parking lots and be taking down license plates of parents' license plate numbers that were there, furious because school boards were involved in promoting, as part of the curriculum, a racist critical race theory and the radical transgender movement that got a young woman raped, and people were furious about it. And here our FBI is telling us we need to go there because these people may be a danger to the United States.
Yeah, parents issuing a grievance are the problem.
Right.
And we can throw in, on top of all this, the weaponization of the very liberal media that the anchor belongs to in the whole Russian collusion scam.
Right. Complete scam.
Over and over again writing that it was collusion, without any evidence whatsoever.
And their entire goal was to destroy a legitimate presidential election in 2016 and destroy that incoming president by repeating a lie over and over and over again that they did very successfully.
Right.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I'll say this about Tlaib. I believe she has betrayed the Palestinian people.
Yeah.
You don't hear her criticizing Hamas at all like she does Israel.
Right.
If Hamas did not exist and didn't have control, do you believe and the Palestinian people were actually represented by an elected government with a charter that did not say annihilate Israel and kill Jews? Do you believe that they could come to a settlement?
Yes.
Yes.
I think there would be long-lasting peace.
She never criticizes the terrorist group that is brutalizing her own people.
Right.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood.